So you're saying hide my dog background? I should do that at a customer meeting. That'd be really fun. Set my desktop to like the Elk logo or something. Curator. How do you like the? Those are the wireless earbuds.
We're going to go ahead and get started.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. You're going to need to be on the screen.
Details.
You good?
You need to be on the screen. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Brief technical difficulties, so just bear with us. We're logistical. We need it on.
Okay.
HDMI?
Yeah.
We need an IT guy?
Open and take it.
Great.
Congratulations. Thumbs up.
Oh.
Yes. Bill, you're going to need to select your desktop.
For the share.
Yeah, I'm seeing your camera now.
Where do you want it? You want him standing here? It's good.
Yeah, it's his. He needs to share.
Anybody seen that movie?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Is that what they said?
I know that's right.
Yeah, what else would they bring up for TV?
Good? Yeah. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. So if you haven't already gotten some food or drink, you know, it's in the back. Good evening and welcome everybody to the March edition. DC Splunkers, this is our 15th month, 16th month? 15-month anniversary. So we've grown from a hodgepodge group of about 10 people to we're now seeing between 40 and 50 people each month. So welcome to everybody who's new. Those who've come back, we appreciate you coming back and hope to keep seeing you.
So yeah, we meet the last Wednesday of every month with the exception of September.
Yep.
We are looking for speakers for later this month, later this year. So if anyone is interested or know of any good talks or people who want to present, please let us know. We're always open to bring in new speakers to the chapter. I guess just some logistical stuff. If you need Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi information is on board. Restrooms are up by the elevator, and so forth. Please eat some chicken. Otherwise, Sandy and I will have to overload a Lipitor to the amount of cholesterol based off of the chicken that's left. So, a couple things.
We could monitor your blood levels.
Yes, exactly.
That's next month's speech.
We do need to thank our friends at Copper River Enterprise Services for providing the beverages, the beer, and the chicken. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so I'm a principal engineer for Copper River Enterprise Services. We have a number of our folks here tonight. We're a public sector as well as commercial, small business, tribal company. We do a lot of work in the solutions architecture, specifically around cybersecurity and policy framework, implementation engineering for around Splunk specifically now. You know, we're here, so if anyone's interested in talking, that's my little pitch. I'm not here to sell you, I'm just here to talk.
We're hiring.
Yeah, and we are hiring. So,
So you are here to sell.
so he said it, not me. So if you're looking for a job, he's the MC.
Okay, so this is a great point because we get so Sandy, myself, where's Ryan in the back, and Matt in the back. The four of us are the chapter leads for the DC chapter. We get asked all the time of, hey, you know, we're looking to hire Splunk people, or hey, can we tell your chapter that we're hiring? So the easiest way for us to do this is if you're here and you're hiring people who Splunk people, please raise your hand. So anyone who's interested or looking, talk to one of the people with their hands raised. We appreciate those coming out. Our community is small. It's really hard to find talented Splunk people, as we all know. But there are people who are actively looking for folks. So if you're interested, please reach out to one of the folks. Again, raise your hand. Anyone with their hand raised. Cool? We good? Okay.
Yep, great. Thanks, Rodney. So before we get started tonight, I just want to mention a couple other things. So in January, we started talking about doing a hackathon. We originally were planning to schedule that for the summer. Some of the logistics concerns came up because we're trying to engage with the local universities to get their cyber teams to actually participate. And the universities that I've spoken to have suggested we wait until September or October when the students are back into session. So we're probably going to postpone that until October. What that means is we have a lot more time to actually plan it. We're going to be coordinating with OWASP for application security people to have them help us provide content. Some of the folks at Splunk have offered to help in helping us get the framework set up. WWT Technologies is setting up Lab as a Service, so we have the equipment. We as the Splunk users group are going to be the defenders. It is going to be an all-day attack. And while the attack is happening, we're going to have people from this group building content, doing research, doing the analysis, building content so that we can figure out what's going on and stop the attack. And so we're the defenders, red team, blue team activities. So we'll have a lot more detail about how this is going to work. What I'd ask is if anyone is interested in actually participating in the committee that's working to set this up, please see me tonight. I will put you on the mailing list that I've put together, and we'll be starting to send out information on what we need logistic-wise, as well as help. So there's that. Anyone here go to Splunk Live in DC? Was it good? How was it?
Yeah.
Good content? So, you know, we as a user group meet monthly, but the live events are great because you get a much broader audience in the DC area, and there's some great presentations. I unfortunately wasn't able to make it this month. But we know .conf is coming up. It's going to be here in our backyard this year. So September, .conf DC. So I highly recommend everybody start planning ahead so that they need to get their manager's approval for that, you know, buy, right?
I was going to say call for papers submissions actually just opened up too. So if you have any comments,
Could you post that in the chat? Because I was looking for that today and could not find it.
Yesterday.
Okay, so call for papers. Raise your hand if you've been a speaker at a live or conf. Okay, so there's a number of us here that have. I highly recommend it. It was a great experience for myself last year. Submit something of interest to you related to Splunk. Splunk goes ahead and decides if it's of interest to them. And if it is, you get a free ticket down to conf, and you get an opportunity to stand in the room and tell people about your presentation. So,
May I add one thing to that?
please.
So from a Splunk perspective, we want nothing more than to have you guys in here speaking, not us, at those conf events. If you're a systems integrator, if you're a customer, if you are not a Splunk employee and touch Splunk in some way, and you're interested in possibly being a presenter, being on panel, submitting an abstract, or maybe you need some help with it, reach out to a Splunker that's a member of this group here. They will bend over backwards to make that happen. We want you up there, not us.
Folks here who are Splunk employees, would you mind raising your hand? Okay, so we've got a couple of folks here tonight. All of these people are very talented. You know, they're also fairly active. They're fairly active both with the accounts that some of us work on, as well as in the local users group community. So everybody here on the Slack channel for Splunk, raise your hand if you are. All right, if you're not, you should get. You need to be. It's a great place where we interact. We talk about everything from what's going on in Splunk, support people need help, technical questions related to security, discussions on architecture, discussions on how to do something. Just there's a bunch of banter that goes on in some of the other chats. It's a great way for the community to stay together and talk in between our meetups. So it was at splunkers402.com.
Sure.
Splunk402.com. You can go ahead and self-register and get an invite for the Slack channel. Last thing, so I've had the opportunity now twice to be at a search party where tonight's speaker is going to Mr. Bill Van All. He is a fantastic speaker, and as I understand it, he comes with a pretty strong background related to ITSI. So I don't think we could have found a better subject matter expert to speak to us tonight. So without any further ado, Bill, please come on up.
Thanks, Dave.
And thank you.
Cool. So thank you to the DC Splunk users group for having us come out here tonight, having me come out tonight to speak. I was sharing with the gentleman earlier while we were getting beers and chicken that I've had the Baltimore and the DC user groups meetups on my calendar and on my radar now for months, and never actually make it out on usually a customer site or elsewhere. So it's pretty awesome. The first time I get to come visit you guys is to get here and talk about ITSI. So thank you very much. Jump right in. What we're going to do, right? Always got to start with the agenda slide. I'll give you a 30-second background on me so that you know who's up here talking. I'm not here to talk about myself. Nobody's interested in that anyway. We're going to talk about ITSI. Show of hands. How many folks know IT Service Intelligence? It's not exactly new now. It's been out for about 2 years. So you've seen some demos. You're familiar with the product. Hopefully, you're going to come away from this with some new insights on how either you within your organization, or if you're a reseller or SI, your customers can get some more value and benefit from ITSI. We're going to talk about the key components of ITSI, what it adds on top of core Splunk, right? That's important. ITSI is not instead of the Splunk Enterprise Platform. It's on top of. Talk about some additional cool features, and then we're going to tell some stories because it's almost bedtime. About me. Also known as 2.0, you'll find me on Slack, you'll find me on HipChat, you'll find me in IRC and whatever other communication channels we have. Usually it's 2.0. I am first and foremost a technologist. I'm one of you guys, right? I've been a Splunk employee for about 5 years now. I was a contractor for 20 years before that. So I've done what you guys are doing. I have the scars. I've lived to tell the tale. And interestingly, I did a lot of it with Splunk. So my first Splunk experience was like beta version 0.5 or whatever it was. It was pretty terrible. It was party foul. No worries. Early days of Splunk, it was around the 2007, early 2008 timeframe when I piloted Splunk at a federal customer for a log management use case. Fast forward to a few years ago, I deployed a terabyte solution across multiple gateways at one of my civilian customers. Also use Splunk in defense and intelligence agencies as well. And still decided to come work with the company, right? So you know the product's not all that bad. Love data, love getting as much value out of data as possible. Educator, adjunct faculty at a university as time permits, and work Splunk into my students' coursework and curriculum as much as I can. And of course, Splunk. I've been here for going on 5 years now, and still alive to tell the tale. And most importantly, if anybody likes sales, send me an email, hit me up after this. Because if I can say I'm taking a customer or partner sale, that's a day off. Love to go sell out in the Bay or anywhere else for that matter. Sandy mentioned, my ITSI credentials, I guess. So I was the first hire 2 years ago onto the ITSI launch team when Jonathan Spelling was putting that together. I had the privilege of working on that team and taking ITSI from its pre-announcement early adopter program through the announcement at .conf 2 years ago, up through this past November when I left that team, where we deployed large deployments around the world. I got to work in Germany and Australia and the UK and Australia and across the US and Australia because they have great sailing. So every chance I had to go back to Australia was where we went. But again, very, very familiar with the product, so feel free tonight or afterwards via email. If you have ITSI questions or complaints or thoughts, hit me up, and if I can answer them, we can get you to the people who can. So, ITSI, IT Service Intelligence. First thing I want you guys to do, guys and gals, excuse me, is ignore the IT part of that. It's a stupid name. Marketing positioned this when the product was built for the IT operations market. If you sit through a Splunk sales presentation for ITSI, it's going to be about IT operations. And we'll talk a little bit about business services as well, but it's IT operations. A service is a service is a service, data is data, right? And that's where you guys and your organizations and your customers are going to get the most value out of ITSI. Because we're all technologists and data geeks at heart, when we think of a service, we're thinking of these, right? We're thinking of, I'm responsible for the network, I'm responsible for security, I'm responsible for the VMs or the Windows infrastructure, or one of these things that are here. And that's fine. Those can be services, right? If I talk to a web administrator and ask her, what's your service? She's going to tell me, well, I'm responsible for these 100 servers. I got to make sure Apache's running. I've got an SLA to meet, 5 nines. I'm going to monitor performance metrics on those boxes, right? Memory, CPU, IM stats, what have you. And maybe make sure that Apache's running if it's not a given kit. That's my service. And that's a perfectly acceptable answer. It's also a very narrow view of the world. Let's talk to her supervisor, and let's ask her what her service is. Those web servers, they're important, right? Maybe the most important part of my service delivery because they're my customer-facing arm. But in order for me to deliver my application and my service, I rely on those web servers and the application servers and the database servers and the network in between and the storage on the back end and the firewalls that the security guys insist on putting in front of my crack. Right? All of that has to work in concert and work well for me to deliver my service. And that's a service by the same definition. If we up-level the conversation one more time to the executive suite, do I have any executives in the room here? Anybody with a C in front of their title? One, excellent. If I'm talking to that, what's your name, sir?
John.
John, if I'm talking to John, John doesn't care about servers. If there's a server running hot on CPU or running out of storage or has been down for a little bit, you got people for that, John?
Yeah, another one.
You pay them well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so John doesn't want to worry about that, right? John doesn't care about servers being down. John might not even care about the availability of an application if it doesn't impact the bottom line or impact his overall service. John's service is his org chart. Bob, Sally, Judy, and Ben report to John. And they damn well better all be green, right? On a scale of red to green. If they're not green, John probably wants to be able to double click down and figure out why real quick, or have some of his people do that. But ultimately, my org chart is my service. And guess what? That can be a service too. Because what we're most interested in are these cross-cutting, cross-silo technologies or business services that are not dependent upon one layer of the application stack. Does that resonate? Does that make sense? Right? Again, nothing wrong with it. If your job is this stack, or is that slice of that stack, pay the utmost attention to it. But if your job is larger than that, or your team's job is larger than that, This is what they care about. And Splunk IT Service Intelligence is really just service intelligence, because we can look at John's org chart as a service, and I can look at the supervisor's application or line of business as a service, just as easily as I can look at my web servers as a service. Right? With that being said, I'm not a death by PowerPoint guy, so I wanted to jump right over into the live product and give you guys a tour. But this isn't a sales tour. I do apologize in advance if I slip into sales mode. I'm not used to addressing an audience and not trying to sell you something. But it's not a sales tour. This is a feature functionality tour, right? The demo that we tell our sales engineers to never give to a customer. Because I want you to see the capabilities of the product and the features of the product that will be useful to you in your environments or in your customer environments to take back from tonight and get value out of. The first screen here, the main landing page of the ITSI app, is what we call Service Analyzer. And it's pretty simple. It's a list of services and a list of KPIs. Services on top, KPIs on the bottom. Services have a health score in the range of 0 to 100. 100 is green, 100 is good, 100 is well, get to go to a user group meeting and have a beer. 0 is red, 0 is bad, 0 is somebody's getting a call from John and probably not working here tomorrow, right? And there's a spectrum in between. KPIs, on the other hand, have a real measure. It depends on what the KPI is. If I'm measuring latency, it's a number in milliseconds. If I'm measuring a count of something, if it's a count of something bad, hopefully it's a number in single digits. If it's a count of something good, hopefully it's a number in triple digits, right? These are actual real measures of a metric taken from a Splunk search. Every KPI is just a Splunk search running in the background. Search my data, return results, perform some stats command on it. Maybe it's a count, an average, a min, a max, a standard deviation, and return that number as my KPI. So the thing to remember there is KPIs must be metrics. KPIs must be numbers that you're interested in measuring. If you're interested in the top 10 talkers on your network, it's a great panel of Splunk dashboard, it's not a KPI. If you're interested in the list of malware signatures seen in the last 24 hours, interesting dashboard panel, not a KPI, right? Lists and tables, not KPIs, metrics are KPIs. As I collect those metrics into buckets, if you will, bundle them together, that's how I form a service. So if I look and filter this view and say, let's clean this up a little bit, I'm only interested in my web tier, my middleware tier, and my database tier. I can filter the view. I can see only those 3 services and only those KPIs that correspond to those services. So every one of your users can have a filtered, customized view. Every one of your lines of business or departments can have a filtered, customized view of only those things that matter to them. And when they start trying to triage a problem, doing root cause analysis, trying to figure out what's going on in the environment, simply read top to bottom, left to right. Because this view is always sorted dynamically in the order of most critical to least critical. So right now, of those 3 services, middleware seems to be doing good, web seems to be doing good, my database service is degraded. On a scale of 0 to 100, it's 71.4. That's not good. Why? Well, if I look at KPIs, I see that most of them are green, they're good, a couple of them are degraded, and I've got a handful that are critical. The number of errors seen on my web service, the percent memory free, and the percent storage free on my database service are both red. It tells me that it's just really small and you can't see it. All right, so this is the most basic view of ITSI. And this is the one that honestly a lot of your customers, a lot of your executives or directors might want up on the knock wall. As simple as it is, it conveys a message very clearly. But wait, there's more. In ITSI, we introduced a brand new concept, a new visualization type for Splunk called class tables. How many folks have ever seen a Splunk OI demo, operational intelligence demo? One in the back? They look cool. Lots of moving stuff, spinning wheels, and fancy graphics and stuff. I've had customers tell me, that's amazing. That shows me exactly what I want to see from my environment. I want to buy that. Well, guess what? Splunk can't sell them that. Splunk can sell you the platform and a month of professional services to build that. The OI demo, I don't enjoy, I don't like personally, because it's misleading, right? I cannot point and click. I can absolutely do that in Splunk. I cannot point and click my way to success to build that in Splunk. How many folks outside of the OI demo have ever tried to build a fancy, graphically appealing, custom dashboard? Doug, I see a hand. I say, hands. Okay. Was it super easy? Custom XML, custom HTML, custom CSS, right? Token passing, not easy.
Great pastime, absolutely.
Great pastime, absolutely. Yeah, if you're bored at night,
By the way, yeah, Ryan in the back here, yeah, you need that person, that's Ryan.
Ryan, all right, there you go. There you go.
Programmer.
I remember, I'll interject a little anecdote here. So I remember a story about that. Rewinding, I guess maybe, geez, 5, 6, 7 years ago now, 8 years ago maybe. I was at Splunk WashDC as a customer. Splunk Live was a lot smaller back then. And the public sector team, I think, was like 10 people, right? And my account rep, Anna Tam, those of you know Anna, my account rep insisted on introducing me to everybody in the company while I was there, which was pretty easy to do because we're all in one room. And we're walking through the hallway, and Eric Swan, everybody knows Eric, right? Co-founder of Splunk, Eric Swan walked by, and I'm in total fanboy mode. I was like, oh my God, that's Eric. Like, I've got to go shake his hand. I've got to, like, you can breathe this thing in air. Like this is amazing. And Aaron Sweeney, our now VP of marketing, was his handler for the night, making sure he got ready to go. And Eric walked by, and I grabbed his attention. We had a very brief exchange conversation, and he asked me, what customer I was working for, what project we're working on. I shared that with him, and he says, well, Bill, if there's ever anything I can do to help you out, just let us know. And that's when snarky too many beers Bill came out, and I said, well, Eric, how about the next time I'm up at 2 a.m. working on your shitty product and having a problem, I just give you a ring, you tell me out with that. And he was like, that would be amazing. Yes, he starts to write down his number, at which point Eric yanks him away. So building custom dashboards, as I was at that time, is not fun and is not easy. It is a great pastime at 2 a.m. Glass tables is the answer to it. Okay, glass tables is point and click, drag and drop your way to success to build things like this. And this is a pretty basic version, let's be honest. I turned this out in PowerPoint in about 5.5 minutes, and most of that was trying to color the damn blocks. So we're going to show you an example of how to build a glass table here a little bit later on, how easy it is, and I'm not lying, that it's point and click, drag and drop. But the idea behind the glass table visualizations is to provide visually appealing, contextually relevant dashboards easily. Right? Visually appealing. My executive's going to look at this. My director's going to look at this. We're going to tell you another story about that later. And contextually relevant. I can see what's going on in my environment. I don't have to have gone through a 6-month onboarding program with my company to understand the history of the evolution of our infrastructure and blah, 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 blah. I can say, I've got a problem that's impacting business. Revenue is down. Number of checkouts is down. I've got degraded performance across my entire stack, except for my external APIs. So who am I not going to call to triage this? Those guys. Let them keep doing their job, because apparently they're pretty good at it. My problem might be in my web tier. My problem might be in my mobile tier or my middleware tier, but I'm seeing the flow here. I'm seeing what impacts another thing. And at the root of it all is my database, and happens to have the lowest health score of all of them. Let's direct my attention there to start with. Is it the smoking gun? Is it guaranteed to be a database problem? Of course not. But you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to convene the war room, open the conference bridge, get the heads of the 5 families together and start pointing fingers. By the way, who do we blame first? Firewalls.
Not me.
Firewalls or network? Firewalls because it's fun. Network because it buys me time. The network's like flat, right? Nobody understands the network. So while they're trying to find their packet sniffers and do this and do that, whatever, we bought 24 hours of these, right? Do that. I know we're going to direct my resources first. So what's next? Okay, Bill, great. Glass table shows me maybe I want to call the database team and tell them to fix their shit. What's next? Every one of these widgets, health scores, KPIs, are drillable. By default, they drill down into what Splunk ITSI terms a deep dive view. I can change that. I can drill into another glass table. I can drill into a Splunk dashboard, one of those ones that has a list or a table of things on it. I can drill into a third-party URL. You got another tool in your environment that you want to go troubleshoot database stuff with? Great, let's drill out to it. But by default, I'm going to drill down into this deep dive view. And the deep dive view shows me all of the KPIs for that service, in this case the database service that I clicked into, plotted one against another over time. The purpose of this view is to allow the human analyst to do what human analysts are good at, and that's spot patterns and detect changes, right? So what do I see here? I see 3 KPIs that are not at all interesting to me because they've been green and normal the entire time. So let's clean up the view. Let's get rid of that. Let's select our CPU utilization in the database here, our database number of service requests, and our network utilization packets in and out. Get those guys out of there. Okay? So now we're getting a cleaned up view. I can reorder these swim lanes any way I want to. Let's bring that guy up. Let's bring these guys up. That guy down. All right. So now I'm going to do my human analyst job. I'm going to start taking a look at this and say, well, right around the time that my service health score started to degrade, what else was going on? Well, my percent memory free across my database tier dropped to a critical state. Notice that's a single line, that's an aggregate. So in this case, it's probably an average across all of my database servers. And it dropped to a critical state based upon the thresholds I've set. Right? Around that same time, my number of database, my database service response time increased to a critical level. And it didn't do it instantly. First it was marginal, then it was high, then it was critical. Boy, wouldn't it be great to get ahead of these things before the phone starts ringing and the tickets start getting open? Let me know when something's marginal and stick my database guys on it before it goes critical, right? ITSI does that. And around that same time, storage free space went to a critical level. Notice that that one's not a single line. That one's not an aggregate. I've broken out my worst 3 performing storage servers, or database servers in this case, excuse me, from a storage perspective, into individual trend lines on that time chart. And so I'm able then to drill into any one of those that I want to. And I might say, well, even though the KPI went critical, 2 of them seem to be trucking right along the way that they always have been. They're less interesting to me. One of them seems to be the culprit. I can double click and drill into that, right? If I do that, click on that one line, tell it to go to host OS details, it opens up this next page, collecting every metric about that host I could ever possibly want. And because I was in the storage swim lane, it focuses on the storage tab, which shows me what? It shows me that my latency increased, my IOPS were up, and pie charts probably shouldn't be one color. Right? Contrived data, it tells a story, it was built to do that. But this story came from a real customer environment. This is one of the first problems ITSI helped solve. My service is degraded. My phones are ringing, customers are opening tickets, fix your stuff, why can't I get my job done? Where do I begin? Traditionally, it's convening the 5 families, pointing the fingers, opening the conference threads, and trying to figure out, is it the web servers, the application servers, the database servers, what is it? For those keeping score at home, 3 clicks. I got from degraded service, it's not green, let's figure out why, to a detailed view of a specific host in my database tier that tells me I've got a serious problem. Is that the root cause of my problem? And this story just happens to be. It may not be, but it's certainly a large contributor, right? Fix that. And chances are that KPI is going to go up, that service health score is going to go back up. Let's go back to this deep dive view for a second because there's a special visualization in here. Notice that we didn't touch on this last lane. Database service errors. It's a simple heat map. How many errors, in this case, right, as returned by a search looking for errors in my database logs, how many errors am I seeing? Well, while I was green, none. 0 events, 0 events, 0 events. Starts to pick up, 1 or 2, 3. 3 events there. It's a darker shade of blue. What's going on? If only I knew what those 3 errors were. I clicked on the wrong one, but there's 2 errors. The machine data, right from the Splunk search, right there. Again, those keeping score at home, 3 clicks. Service Analyzer or Glass Table, deep dive to raw event data. And I did not have to leave this view to do it. From a sales view perspective, that's resonated very well with my customers. That's closed more than 1 deal for me. If you're an SI or a VAR, I will close more than 1 deal for you. If you're a customer, don't worry about closing deals. That will help you fix your problems. Right? So, talked a little bit about services. A question?
So how much of this is automated by ITSI versus you building out all of those dashboards and those metrics and those KPIs? Beautiful
question. So, let me table that for 30 seconds because I think what I'm about to say will answer that. So I talked about ITSI being an app that rides on top of course, Splunk, the Splunk platform, right? Nothing changes with Splunk Enterprise. I'm ingesting data in Splunk Enterprise. I'm indexing my data in Splunk Enterprise. I'm making it searchable in Splunk Enterprise. ITSI rides on top. So why would anybody ever buy ITSI? What's the value? Everybody familiar with Enterprise Security app? Yeah? Okay. Splunk Enterprise knows that you have data. It knows that data is broken into events. It knows that events have fields and events have timestamps. That's about all Splunk Enterprise knows. It's not smart contextually about your data. When you purchase Splunk Enterprise Security and lay it on top, Splunk now knows that you have threats and bad actors and assets and identities and all of those security contextually relevant things, right? ITSI adds the IT contextual relevance to your data. Splunk now knows you have entities, which are basically assets, right? Things within my environment I'm going to take measures of. It knows you have KPIs, which are those measures. It knows you have services, which are collections of KPIs. And those services have health scores on a scale of 0 to 100, which is a measure of aggregate performance of what those KPIs are doing, severity level-wise. So ITSI gives me services, health scores, KPIs, and entities. Do I have to configure all that out of the box as the obvious logical follow-on question? Because everybody's service is going to be different. There's no services configured out of the box, and there are no business level KPIs for those services. But every one of you in here has a web server. Every one of you in here has a database server. Every one of you in here has some network gear. Every one of you in here has one or more hypervisor solutions running with those operating systems on them. Those KPIs to measure things like we see in this screen right here are available out of the box as modules. So there's modules for web servers, application servers, hypervisors, virtualization servers, database servers, load balancers. I'm probably forgetting half of those off the top of my head. They give you those technical, sort of lower level KPIs out of the box, how you choose to organize them into services, and then what additional KPIs you're going to add to those services are up to the end user to configure. I'll get your question in 1 second. So if I come back to my glass table, here, the health score is dynamically generated just by the virtue of creating the KPI, or excuse me, the service and having KPIs under it. Health score, health score, health score, all dynamic. Health score. Over there, those specific KPIs, revenue and checkouts, we're not going to have out-of-the-box KPIs. I don't know how you measure revenue or how you measure checkouts, but those are simple Splunk searches, right? Run a Splunk search over the last 5 minutes, how many users have completed the purchase action in my web store, that's a checkout. But if I was measuring things like database latency time or response time or CPU memory on my web tier, mobile tier, those are out-of-the-box KPIs. John, you had a question?
Does enterprise security have this glass table capability built in?
The latest version does, yes.
It has all the objects too?
They handle the objects a little bit differently. So enterprise security does not understand KPIs, services, and health scores. Those are unique to ITSI. Within enterprise security, you can configure searches to return specific security metrics like number of threats detected last 24 hours, something like that, and then you can show it on a view similar to this. But it does not have that hierarchical construct and knowledge of services, KPIs, entities.
Can I extend the ESM ontology to be able to plug in those additional objects?
Not today. Fair question. There is an effort underway. So to give you the history of how glass tables got into enterprise security, because it makes me mad. We came up with this amazing capability in ITSI, and the enterprise security team said, that's really cool, we're going to do that too. And so within Splunk internally, we created a new, business unit, a new development team that focuses on core functionality or cross premium solution functionality. And they took over sort of ownership and further development of glass tables so that it's not now ITSI specific, it can be shared among other premium solutions. And that's how it found its way in enterprise security. Will that team in time take on additional responsibilities and capabilities and start sharing other things between ITSI and enterprise security and the core platform? Probably. I don't know what the roadmap looks like. But yeah.
Are the object definitions, are those chargeable or are they open like libraries?
How many understand charge? Not chargeable. They ship actually with the product.
So I could get those libraries and I could force fit them into my ESM.
Sure, you could do some development around that, absolutely. Yep. The modules, those libraries that you're referencing, the modules for ITSI are installed and operate a little bit differently than Splunk apps, but the concept is the same. It's a bundle of configurations and some scripts and executables that create a module. Yep. It's a good question. Very good question. Let's go back to glass tables. I told you it was easy to create one. I don't expect you to believe me because I do sales for a living. So let's create a new glass table. And we're going to call this DC user group meetup. And I'm going to edit my glass table. I get a very rudimentary drawing canvas. I cannot emphasize enough, very rudimentary. If you've ever tried to use this drawing canvas to create a glass table, you will agree with me that it is an exercise in frustration. If you want to make your glass tables look beautiful, as some of them do that in another tool. Do that in Photoshop, do that in Illustrator, do that in PowerPoint if you have to, and import that image or those images into this canvas, okay? This is not meant to make things beautiful, it is meant to make it easy. That being said, I can import one or more images of my choosing as either a background or is it set up by common graph? Right? So if I have a large image, let's say, for example, a logical or physical topology diagram in Visio that I export as a PNG or a GIF or a JPEG, I can bring that up as a background and overlay, drag and drop my KPIs right on top of that diagram. And in fact, that's what some of our customers have done. They said, you know what? It's not beautiful, it's busy, it's kind of ugly, but our engineers know this diagram like the back of their hand, and they can see when something turns red, they know what building it's in, what rack it's in, where the problem is, and they can go fix it, right? We've had other folks create very high-level diagrams. I have when we get to story time, I have images of what real customers have done that we're going to talk about. We've had other folks create very high-level diagrams, maybe only 1 or 2 or 3 KPIs on there, because it's what their executive management wanted to see, right? I don't want to see the weeds. I've got people to see the weeds. I want to see these 3 very important business KPIs and whether they're red, yellow, or green, and be able to drill down if need be to get some more details. So I can import images. I just so happen to have a special image for today's occasion. Let's look at my iCloud account and import this image. And we're going to make it much, much smaller. I should have pre-processed this to make it smaller. So I frequently get a question about the extent of the drawing canvas. I have no idea, but it's huge. More than will fit on the screen. All right, there we go. So this was you guys assembling this evening. That's not going to be my background for my glass table. Okay? Took the photo with my phone, airdropped it to my computer, easy peasy, redundant. And now I just need to make it beautiful, right? So let's add a text box. And we can't have a chart without a text. So this is going to be the DC user group core stats. We're going to make the font purple because, you know, it's my thing.
Are we measuring liver alcohol content?
We absolutely are going to. We're going to make the font Comic Sans, the best font in the world. And we're going to make it like 0.48 so we can actually see it. There we go. Let's make the background transparent. It mostly shows up. Good enough. Now, on the left-hand side, a little bit truncated there. See, I have a list of my services that are configured, and under each service, I have a list of the KPIs for that service. It's truly drag and drop from this point forward. I could say, well, here's my service health score for my middleware. Let's put that right here. There it goes. Here's my response times for my web servers. They're going right there. Right? And I have a bunch of configurations also on the right-hand side that we're not going to get into. You guys can explore the details. I can set heights and widths and turn labels on and off. I can change the thresholds. I can do all kinds of fancy stuff. We're going to add an ad hoc search. So this is a KPI that I have not previously created. I'm going to create it right now for the first time. And we're going to make this search return a static value of 8. Make sure that works. I misspelled something. And, oh, here we go. Got to set my threshold field appropriately. There we go. So I'm cheating. This KPI is always going to return the value 8, but it could, if normal search would return anything I wanted to. We're going to change the visualization type to be a donut visualization. We're going to put it right over Brian's head there. And we're going to title this the number of drinks since noon. And we're going to set some thresholds. Let's turn our thresholds on. And let's say that, there's low because Brian is a Splunker. There's such thing as too few drinks. So there's low. there's normal, there's medium, and there's critical. And normal is going to be anywhere from 0 to 3, and 3 to 6 is going to be medium, and anything above 6 up to 29 is going to be critical. And so what we're going to see is that Brian's pretty critical right now. Save, view, and I just created a class table. Point and click, drag and drop. Your services are predefined, your KPIs are predefined because you've already done that work, right? They appear in that list. I can put any iconography or image I want up here. So what images can I show? Anything web display. GIFs, JPEGs, PNGs, vector art, animated GIFs if you want to get fancy. Anything that can be displayed or rendered in a web browser can be displayed up here either as one static picture or as a set of icons. And there you go, great class tables. Principal use case for this, for those of you who find yourself, so I should have done this at the beginning. How many folks are either a VAR, a systems integrator, or a contractor, not an actual end user customer? How many folks? So a couple. When you find yourself talking to an end user customer and you're in that whiteboard session and you guys are brainstorming the heck out of ideas and you've got a whiteboard full of material, picture that. AirDrop it to your computer or FTP or SCP, wherever you got to get to your computer. Bring it up while the customer is recapping and talking about how valuable the day was. Put some mock KPIs on there. Turn the screen around. So is this what we're talking about? Is this valuable? I realize it's not beautiful. It looks like a bunch of scribbles on a whiteboard. You can hire your art department to make it pretty. But this is the dashboard you're saying you want, right? And when their jaw drops to the floor, you've closed the deal. Done that more than one occasion. On more than one comment.
So I saw an interesting demonstration of the use of background years ago. It was pretty impressive, and it was a picture of a server room, and then stats were put on top of that actual picture, and the intent was to help the field maintenance guy walk into a room unfamiliar with it and be able to look at it and tell this rack is having a problem, this box is having a problem. It's a very interesting idea in terms of a background picture or a picture represents something that somebody else might not be familiar with, but leads them physically to a problem.
Our second ever ITSI install was here in the States over in Salt Lake City. And they didn't start off with that as a goal, but they ended up using it for exactly that reason. The infrastructure that we were monitoring in ITSI to meet their requirements was one that they had a tier 1, tier 2 sort of triage help desk situation and a lot of turnover, constantly new people coming into this environment. And it took them time to get up to speed with, customers calling up and saying that the web server alpha's down. What's web server alpha? What's it do? What's it impact? Where's that? Who do I call? They created a glass table that contextually relevant, remember that showed them how one thing impacted another, so that these new people rolling in didn't need really any onboarding. They could look at the picture and figure out where the problem was and who to call and what to do about it. Very similar to that story. Yep. Come here and take a look at a service. Let me see if I can fix my truncation on the screen here. All right. So in this case, we have my web service. Remember, a service is just a collection of KPIs. Within my web service, those are the KPIs I've decided I'm going to monitor that are going to determine my web service health score. They're going to determine if I'm red, yellow, green. Okay? I'm looking at number of errors. I'm looking at network traffic in and out. I'm looking at the number of website requests hitting my website or hitting my load balancers. I'm looking at response times. Those all sort of make sense, right? As valuable web service KPIs. And almost all of those out of the box through modules, right? The number of corporate website requests and total front-end requests, I believe we custom created. The others are out of the box web server modules. So I can adjust the importance of each one of those KPIs on a scale of 0 to 11. ITSI like a Rockstar, right? L-Dom's good 11. I can adjust the importance on a scale of 0 to 11 for how much of an impact each one of these KPIs, performance and severity, should have on my health score. Right now, they're all evenly weighted. It's basically a weighted average of their performance, of my health score can be. But I could say, no, you know what? The number of, the length of response time, super important KPI in my environment. I know historically, if response times go up, everything just kind of starts to go to hell. So I'm going to make response times much more important. I'm going to drag that up to 9. And what if response time wasn't normal? What if it was critical? What impact would that have on my health score? Look, it dropped my health score from 100 down to 79. No, that's too much. I shouldn't go all the way down below, just if that one KPI is critical. So let me adjust that slider back down a little bit. Let's make that instead of 9, let's make that a 7. So now I'm degraded, I'm 83, but I'm still normal, I'm still green. You see how that works? And you can play with that until you get the weighting that makes sense for your environment. Again, everybody's going to be different, which is why it's not prescribed, it's not out of the box.
Is the machine learning engine behind this?
We'll get there. Yep, great question. 0 means don't factor this KPI into the health score, exclude it. 1 to 10 is a weighted average. 11 is your special dial. 11 is your manual override. 11 says this KPI is so important that I don't care what the rest of the KPI is doing, what the weighted average is. If this KPI is critical, my service is critical. If this KPI is high, my service is high. And so we can see what that looks like. What if I make response times 11? My health score drops all the way down to critical, right? That's how that works. If we drill a little bit deeper and look at one of those KPIs, let's pick on my corporate website requests. John, you're gonna love this. So we've been talking about threshold. We've been talking about red, yellow, green. Where's that come from? Let me ask any one of you, anyone brave soul in here, do you know for your organization, for your lines of business, for your applications that you're responsible for, what every SLA that you're responsible for meeting is, what the thresholds for those SLAs are, and what the important KPIs are and what their thresholds are? Everybody got that documented written down somewhere? In 22 months of world travels, I've encountered one guy who had that answer. And I swear to God, he was the most excited person I've ever seen. When I said, do you have this documented? He literally jumped in and said, like, let me get my binder. And he left the room and he came back with a 4-inch D-ring binder with everything documented. I was like, well, this is gonna be a super short meeting. Nobody else knows that, right? It's too complicated. And it changes all the time. So we have an answer to that. And it uses, if you'll allow the term, machine learning. This is my live data for my threshold number of corporate website requests over the last 60 minutes. We got to set some thresholds. So let's set some thresholds. Let's say that there is such a thing as too low, right? I'm getting too few web requests. Something must be wrong. Something must be down. And then there's normal. And then there's medium. And then there's critical. And maybe it looks something like that. Seems reasonable. You guys buy that? What if I'm not looking at the last 60 minutes worth of data? What if I'm looking at the last 7 days worth of data? Well, now I'm screwed. Now I'm going to get false alerts all the time because static thresholds are useless in today's day and age. Machine data is noisy. Machine data is cyclical. Machine data has lots of peaks and valleys and bumps. I can't set static thresholds and not expect to get false negatives or false positives. So we're going to fix it. 2 ways ITSI has to fix that. The first is time-based policies. I'm going to enable time-based policies, and I can now set different thresholds for different days of the week and different hours of the day. The smallest level of granularity is 1 hour. So I could treat Monday through Friday different than Saturday and Sunday. I could treat 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. different from off hours. I could treat noon on Wednesday different from every other time if I want to. I can have a different set of thresholds for every hour of every day. And that's pretty cool, but that's super tedious, and I'm really lazy. I'm not gonna set a different threshold for every hour of every day. Even if I wanted to, I don't know what the right answer is. What's high, normal, medium, critical for every hour of every day? So we got that fixed too. I'm gonna turn on adaptive thresholding. We're gonna use some supervised machine learning here, right? Look back over my real live data for either 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, or 60 days, depending on how much real live data you have. I only have 7, so that's what we're gonna use. And you analyze my data, apply that machine learning algorithm John asked about, and you tell me, for my environment, what's normal, what's low, what's medium, what's high, what's critical, okay? We've given you a bunch of templates to do that with. There's a whole big list here. So remember, like I said, AM different from PM, work hours different from off hours, different from weekends, 3-hour blocks during the work week only. There's a ton of templates here. And you can create your own. If you have some crazy time scheme, you can create your own and save it as a template. I'm gonna use the very top one. I'm gonna use 1-hour blocks every day using the quantile methodology. Now, we provide 3 different algorithms, a quantile methodology, an interquartile range methodology, and a standard deviation methodology. Which one are your customers gonna wanna use every time? Standard deviation. And why? Because it's the only statistical term they've ever heard. They're not data scientists, they're not machine learning. They know that standard deviation is this thing that they read about when they were in college, and plus or minus 2 sigmas is bad. Let's use that. Here's the problem. Standard deviation, to work appropriately, depends on a normal distribution, right? A bell curve. Your customer's machine data is not a normal distribution. Standard deviation will not work in most cases. Do not use standard deviation. Use quartile methodology, the quantile methodology, which adjusts for all of those, or takes into account, I should say, all those peaks and valleys and the noisiness of machine data and smooths it out, right? So use that. I'm going to say, yes, I want to use this screen or this template. Look, I've got all my different hours of every day set with different thresholds for every hour. That's pretty cool. And apply my template. Watch what happens to my preview screen, assuming that the demo gods are with me today. Nothing. Let's apply it again, because sometimes it takes 2. There we go. Every day of the week, every hour of the day, with a separate and unique to that hour, low, medium, high, critical, normal threshold set, based upon my real live data over the last 7 days. Could have been 60 if I had 60 days worth of data. And I didn't have to lift a finger to do it. I now have 2 choices. Keep that adaptive, which means every night at midnight-ish, it's going to look back over the last 7 days or whatever training period I've specified, recalculate what the threshold should be, and adjust them as necessary. So if over time, my data is creeping up or creeping down or trending in some way, I'm not going to be 30 days away from a bunch of false negatives again, right? On the other hand, and maybe I've lived under a rock, I just heard this term myself for the first time a few weeks ago, the boiling frog syndrome. Maybe my data shouldn't be creeping up or creeping down or trending in some weird way. And if it is, I would like to find out about that. So I can now lock these thresholds in, make this a static template policy, keep them the way it is, and if my curve starts to not fit those thresholds, I'll get the alerts in. Your choice, static or adaptive. Make sense? Valuable? John, you like that?
Looks good.
All right. Let's bounce.
EKG.
So that was actually real customer data from our first ever ITSI install. We cleaned it up and anonymized it and all that kind of good stuff. But that bell curve looking cyclical data, which is not an actual bell curve, is not a normal distribution, so the standard deviation does not work on that well, was real live customer data for number of web requests coming in as the morning picks up, relatively leveling off, but not being static as the day continues on, and then trailing off as the night goes on. And because they were a 24/7, 365 business, it did it every day of the week, weekends included. So we actually modeled that after real live customer data. So let's go to story time now. What have others done? This was the second ever ITSI install, almost 2 years ago now. I had the privilege of working on this one. It's a very simple basic diagram, right? The story of this is, Control 4 was the company. They make, among other things, home automation gear and security systems. So they have a sales guy, goes to a new prospect's business or house, and they pull out of their black bag a controller. And they're supposed to turn it on, and the little blinky lights do what little blinky lights do, and it works. Except sometimes it doesn't. And then the sales guy says, that's odd. He puts it back in his bag and he pulls out another one, and he hopes to God that one works, right? That was the sales process. And they didn't really have any visibility into why sometimes these controllers just didn't come online. They didn't get their profile, and they didn't sync up, and they didn't do the things that a controller was supposed to do when you initiated it and activated it for the first time. So we created the glass table for that. And we asked them, well, what happens? What's going on behind the scenes? They said, well, controller comes online. Before anything else can happen, it sends a certificate request to our provisioning service over the wireless networks, over mobile network. That provisioning service passes it off to a CA. That CA has to issue a signed certificate back to the provisioning server, which at the same time that it passes it back to the controller, writes it into a security audit log. And if that process doesn't work, nothing else matters. And we found that sometimes their controllers weren't getting a signed certificate issued back. Okay, good to know. Why? Where in the process is that failing? And so a very simple glass table saying, over the last 5 minutes, show me how many cert requests came in, how many signed certs were issued, and how many were forwarded to a controller. Very simple. In this screen capture from their live system before I left there that day, it was 1, 1, and 1. Hey, great, in the last 5 minutes, our demo system and environment is working. We saw in production, sometimes those numbers were different, and that's a problem, right? If I've issued in the last 5 minutes 25 cert requests, and 15 of them have been signed, and 2 have been deployed, I got a problem. And I know exactly which of my components in my infrastructure is responsible for that problem. Where to go look, right? Real live use case. Next one of my favorite customers in Australia. This is one of those executive dashboards I told you about. So if you don't know, Tabcorp is an online gaming company, online betting, right? And we created a lot of glass tables. We created a lot of infrastructure views for them. And then the manager said, I don't care. I care about 3 things. How many people are logged into my site, how much money have they put in their account, and how much of it are they paying. All I want to know. Not a technical infrastructure, not an IT service intelligence question, a service intelligence question. And the most valuable one. This screen sold that deal. This one's ugly. And if you look hard enough at it, you'll figure out which company it belongs to. Because there's very few people that have a streaming service that's that complex. However, this was their Visio diagram. This took precisely 0 minutes to create because they already had it. Exported as a PNG, load that bad boy as a background, drag and drop some KPIs on there. I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, was this what you had in mind? Yes, yes, it was. And I can see high-level health score, what's degraded, and where within my infrastructure that problem likely lies. Which team am I going to deploy? Who am I going to call? Not convene the conference bridge in the 5 families. Another Australian company. I told you I like Australia, right? Brian, I have yet to figure out how my new role as staff sales engineer for Health and Human Services I get to go to Australia, but we're gonna fix that.
Do that as a team.
That's right, I need help. Converging Data is a partner of ours, right? Like you guys, some of you guys. They specialize in healthcare in the Asia Pacific market. They actually created this as a marketable product. They sell this app. Revenue generating, right? And it's an app that rides on top of ITSI, that provides glass tables and then KPIs and services on top of ITSI. So for those of you in the VAR SI market, think about revenue opportunities here.
Responsive?
Say again?
Responsive?
In what way?
Is that design responsive?
Yeah, so this will update every 60 seconds. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, like a mobile.
Not well. Yeah, the Splunk mobile app doesn't handle ITSI glass tables at all. ITSI glass tables will render on mobile, and it just depends how busy you are and how big the graphics are as to what that ends up looking like. We'll get there. It's on the roadmap. But in this case, so this was meant for an internal view, right, at a healthcare provider, at a hospital or doctor's office, so I can see my different service areas, my different specialization areas, and how things are trending. What is the health of an area, and what specific KPIs is that based on? As much as I like this one, I like this one better. This is my Candyland view. Same company, Converging Data. This one, I can make public facing. This I could put in the triage room of the ER as people come in.
I thought it was Candyland.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Candyland view, right? So this one I could put in the customer-facing ER area, the triage check-in area, and say, okay, trip to the ER is never fun. I know I'm going to be here forever, but where am I going to get hung up? Where am I really screwed, right? Emergency patient visits, there's 9 coming in, there's 130 people working through admissions right now, 23 need triage. Hey, wait time's actually not that bad, but when I get to prescription dispensing and discharge, I'm screwed. Right? I can use this internally or externally. Again, revenue producing. And my last 2 slides, and my favorite story. Who went to Conf 2 years ago, 15? Good. Everybody saw Michael Connor from Coca-Cola get up on the stage and say really nice things about Splunk. Connor is a huge advocate and fan of Splunk. They've been using it for a long time. They have a lot of data in Splunk and a lot of really cool dashboards and insights into their systems. So Connor called me up about 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. Said, Bill, I want you and a couple of guys from the ITSI team to come down to Atlanta, where we're based, and help me build some ITSI glass tables. I'd love to do that. Always looking for people to get Atlanta. But why? Because I know your environment. I know what you guys do with Splunk. You've got dashboards out the wazoo, and you've got the expertise to build these things. You don't need us for it. What's new, what's changed in your environment that makes you want our systems to come build these best tables? He says, no, I've got all the data I need. And my manager, the CIO of Coca-Cola North America, doesn't give a shit. She's not looking at pie charts, line charts, busy dashboards. We're Coca-Cola. We're a marketing-oriented, brand-oriented company. We need something visually appealing, eye-catching, contextually relevant. Remember that I can look at a glance and see, got it, I know what's going on, right? And so the idea there was, in this example, and this is sort of a dummy mock-up, this wasn't the real data, this was still a work in process when I took this. The idea was these are all third-party services that their internal services depend on. And they wanted to measure the health of each one of those services at a glance on the dashboard. And if something's not green, be able to drill into it and figure out why. And so we helped them create that. They already had the searches, for the most part, for these things. We just turned them into KPIs and turned them into much better dashboards, right? And the next dashboard, which I don't know if I ever made it to production or not. I like to think it did. The next dashboard was looking at a marketing campaign as a service, rather than an IT service. So the bottle cap campaign, right? Take a cap off, it has a code on it, you type it in, you win some money or something. Let's look at that as a service. And what are my KPIs? How many bottle cap codes have been entered in the last 24 hours? How many new customers or leads do we think we've obtained as a result of this marketing campaign versus money spent in the marketing campaign? How many dollars have been awarded during the duration of this marketing campaign? Business KPIs that I can compute in ITSI from the machine data that I'm collecting already, right? So we put together dummy dashboard here, the Coke rewards, the API gateway, the service providers, and at the time, Taylor Swift was the spokesperson for this campaign. So of course we did some nice Coke branding with the colors, put Taylor on the side, did a good Diet Coke, Taylor Swift, everybody. So I would like to think that that's up on the CIO's wall somewhere. But the idea is look at it from a business and marketing KPI perspective, not just an IT perspective. That's it. For everybody in the room, I hope that you got some good ideas. I hope that you got the creative juices flowing for ITSI. You've seen how you can use it in your environment, regardless of whether the environment is 100 web servers, or an entire application line of business, or the executive suite. Any questions?
I have a couple of them.
Yeah, please.
Deployment related. So compared to like enterprise security, ES typically requires like a dedicated server. There's a lot of background correlation searches. In ITSI, are the KPI searches and all the things driving the metrics, is that really up to the customer environment to kind of have those searches defined, or is it very much kind of assuming SIM compliant, intelligent data model searching, summarized index searching, is it, can you write a bunch of bad searches and put them in ITSI?
Sure.
Or is it dependent on enterprise security?
Good question. So ITSI requires everything to be SIM compliant and about 50 extra services. It's actually the complete opposite of enterprise security, right? Nothing has to be SIM compliant, which is a good thing. There's not that upfront tax, if you will, of having to normalize the data to fit any specific data model. The downside is, sure, you can write a bunch of bad searches in ITSI. But it does not require anything to be normalized or to be SIM compliant. It also does not require any dedicated server or servers. In fact, quite the opposite. You want to draw your KPIs from all of the data that you have available to you. Therefore, all of that data should be available to ITSI. So install it on the existing search head cluster, installing it on the existing search head, assuming you have the headroom capacity. If you need to grow your cluster, then please do that. To your point, something we didn't touch on because it's very sort of architecturally in the weeds a little bit. Every glass table that we loaded had multiple widgets, right? Health scores and KPIs. Every one of those things is search. Every one of those is going to update every 60 seconds. The deep dive view had, I think ours had 6 lanes. Some of them have 30 or dozens of lanes. Every one of those lanes is a search. Service analyzer, one of those tiles is a search. So wow, that must be extremely intensive on the system, right? The answer is no. Every KPI is a saved, scheduled search that executes with whatever frequency you tell it to. The smallest level of granularity is 1 minute. Okay, so you can't do real-time searching in ITSI. But I can say, run this search every minute, or run this search every 5 minutes, or run this search every hour. It depends on what the KPI is and what makes business sense, right? When that search runs, it'll return events, it'll compute the stats, it'll deduce or derive the metric KPI, and it writes that numeric value to KB store. Everything else is a search against KB store. Quick. Actually, I'm lying, it's not KV store, I'm sorry, summary indexing. Summary indexing. All of the objects, all of the configurations for ITSI are stored in the KV store. That'll throw you off. If you install ITSI and you go digging through the file system looking for your conf files, they're not there. All of the objects and the configurations for ITSI are stored in the KV store. The metrics are stored in summary index. And there's summary index, which is of course your lightning fast. And that's how we don't overload the servers every time somebody loads a dashboard or a glass table that has 40 metrics on it.
So since it's summary indexing, is that kind of the point where typically GS has to get involved in order to help the customer get what they would normally search for in the summary index?
ITSI handles all, it's all in the back end. You just create the KPI. When you install the app, like many apps, the directory unpacks and there's a number of pieces to it. There is one piece that is the create index add-on that needs to be pushed to the indexer tier. Everything else lives on the search ends. And that's what creates the summary index and allows you to write that data. Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody else?
Is there an OS requirement for ITSI?
There's not. It supports search head clustering, it supports indexer clustering, and it'll run on Linux or Windows, whatever OS your Splunk system is installed on. Like with most things, I think, with Splunk related, you'll get better results installing on Linux. The very first ITSI install we ever did, I showed up on customer site with myself, my manager, Jonathan Cervelli, the AVP of IT operations markets at the time, and Alok, the product manager that created this beast. And we sat down at the conference table and the customer, I think it was like the third question on analysis, does it run on Windows? I went to Alok, does it run on Windows? He's like, sure. And we learned that it didn't need run on Windows after some tweaks. But yes, it now supports any operating system that your Splunk system is installed on.
Is there a chance that Splunk will be moving over to any of the Unixes?
Any of the Unixes?
Such as AX, FreeDSC?
So we have forwarders for all of those now. The core platform, I don't see branching out of those areas. The demand for it's not been there. In fact, I don't know how long you've been following Splunk, we've actually shrunk over the years the number of operating system support, and it's demand-based, right? What do we encounter in 95% of the accounts? It's RHEL or it's CentOS. Every once in a while, I got a customer this week installing on Ubuntu that says it's going to work. I'm like, sure, give it a shot. But yeah, so not going to see Splunk Enterprise running on those anytime soon, or probably.
But I can vouch, you can't be limited core.
Question on machine learning. Is there any capabilities of integrating the machine learning toolkit along with this ITSI?
Being talked about a lot, and I think that we're going to see those coming down the pipe on the roadmap. Today, you're limited in terms of machine learning to what's baked into the product. So there's the adaptive thresholding with the 3 different algorithms we looked at. And there's another feature that we didn't even touch on called anomaly detection. For every KPI, it's a simple checkbox, yes or no, do you want to enable anomaly detection? And what it does is it applies an algorithm against the historical data to train what normal should look like. It uses the predict capability of this, not the predict command, but the prediction capability of this algorithm to guess what the next measured value should be. And then when it actually measures that value, it computes a delta, computes a different score to figure out how far off it was. And if you're off enough, that gets flagged as an anomaly. So those are the two implementations of machine learning in ITSI today. As we, again, go forward on the roadmap, you're going to see more and more stuff baked in and probably some integration with the ML toolkit.
It's also cohesive, right?
Yeah, so there's two types of anomalies, cohesive and standalone. Yeah, they're both under the anomaly detection. Anything else? The one thing I didn't have to show you today that I really wanted to, because it's actually brought up by a fellow Splunker, and I thought it was a fabulous idea. We use ITSI internal to Splunk to monitor our Splunk implementations. And it's a frequent ask by customers to have an app or a module or something that does that. The very first, actually, version of ITSI that we took to customers had a glass table with some really basic KPIs on it for our monitoring Splunk. We ended up pulling that out because we didn't want it competing with DMC. Quite honestly, that's the real answer. So will you ever see a module or an out-of-the-box capability for Splunk to monitor, or excuse me, for Splunk ITSI to monitor your Splunk deployment? Probably not, unless we start putting glass tables and DMC and that kind of stuff. But it has been done. It does exist. People have created services and KPIs and then glass tables for monitoring Splunk. And as soon as I get my hands on the login to that system, I'll send some screenshots out to Doug and Sandy and make sure you guys can distribute that to the group, just so you can get, again, some more creative ideas on what can be done as an example of monitoring your storm. All right, Sandy, turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So again, everyone, thank you very much for coming tonight. I do want to send out a big appreciation to Mr. Doug Token here for taking the time every month to become our video AV technician / broadcast engineer. So he's been taking and making these recordings up and live for audience in the webs, as well as for our future retention. So again, thank you. Speakers for next month, if anyone's interested, any sponsors for next month, if anyone's interested, please speak to me, Rinaldi, Brian, Matt, any one of us to talk about that. Other than that, again, Copper River Enterprise Services, thanks you all for coming tonight. And any other questions?
Drink more food.
There's
more beer.
So that's where I'm going. There is food and beer in the back. Take it with you. Have one for the road. No. So no, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.